My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute passed and leathwards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep-delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known. The weariness, the fever, and the fret here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad lost grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pineth them beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his bards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee. Tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown, through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but in embalmed darkness guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild. White hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Darkling I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sword. Thou was not born for death, immortal bird, no hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when sick for home she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? The poem is written as a Horatian ode named after the Roman poet Horace. These odes are built with a consistent stanza length and meter. This poem is written in 8 separate stanzas of 10 lines each, and as one might reasonably assume for a Romantic era poem, majorly in iambic pentameter. The rhyme scheme followed is A, B, C, D, E, C, D, E. Odes are lyric poems and often an expression of an intense emotion or a celebration of an object or idea. The 5 odes were arguably the most memorable accomplishments of Keats' short and bright poetic career. One can find written on Poetry Foundation's rundown on Keats the following. In a letter to his brothers in 1817, Keats described the essential quality of the poet as a negative capability, or a receptivity to uncertainty, mystery, doubt, and the mutability of things. This poem is nothing if not a sad song to the darkness, written within the song of the nightingale. The poet complains of a heartache, a drowsy, numbing pain, as if he had taken a poison or a drug, but the sensation is not from envy of another's joy, but rather from the nightingale's. the subject of the poem, song that is loud and sweet in the summer woods. In the second stanza, the poet craves for wine initially and then for creative inspiration. He craves wine from France that tastes like the green country, song and dance and summer mirth. What he wouldn't do for a beaker full of water from the Hippocrene, a fountain sacred to the muses that's bubbling to the brim. He would very much like to drink it and fade away to the forest with the nightingale. It would be good to forget the troubles that the nightingale has never known, weariness and maladies, groaning and fretting, despair and dark thoughts, fickle beauty and mortal love. The poet wants to fly away, not intoxicated but carried by poetry, and though his dull imagination seeks otherwise, he is already with the nightingale. In the forest, there is no light but the moon's, carried by the gentle night breeze through the dark green trees. The second half of the poem opens with a rich description of the forest scene. The air is heavy with an incense, and in the darkness there is the grass and the fruit trees, the rose and the flies. The poet has been in love with a gentle death for long. He has called out to death to be taken with the nighttime air, and now as the nightingale song floods the forest quiet, it seems the ideal time to have the soul fly out. The next stanza addresses the nightingale song. It has lived forever through the hungry generations, heard by the ancient emperor, and possibly was the song that soothed Ruth, a woman who worked in the fields of her dead husband's mother as a sign of loyalty. The final part of the poem intensifies the conflict between imagination and reality. The poet must return to it. He cannot be deceived by the fancy, and as the song of the bird fades into the nearby meadows and buries itself into the valley, he wonders if what he witnessed was a dream, a vision, or reality, if he was awake or asleep. The nightingale and its rich, intoxicating nighttime world are at the center of the poem. The nightingale represents a carefree existence that is free from the burdens of time, death, and worry. As such, it serves as a symbol of unbridled beauty, immortality, and unfettered freedom. The poem is the product of imagination that allows him to experience the darkness and traverse through history and fairylands. It contains several antitheses which work beautifully together. Pleasure and pain, escapism and reason, permanence and change, immortality and mortality, freedom and bondage, waking and dreaming, which is, well, life. It's such a rich poem in imagery, in language, in poetic style and theme. It's everything you'd want in a vivid